All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the actual content. You will hear from three of us today. My name is Megan Eric, and I am one of the trainers with the technology training team. And we'll be joined by Monica Jenkins. She'll walk you through how to use WebEx, the platform. And then at the end, Kimberly Robertson will come in with some important tips and strategies for transitioning from face-to-face meetings and webinar or trainings to virtual environments and things that we need to keep in mind as we plan and execute those sessions. So first, we'd like to take a moment. It's been about 3 months now that we've all been working in this telework situation. So I'd like to give you an opportunity to share some of your reflections on that. And if you could, open your chat window. Again, it's the icon on the bottom that looks like a speech bubble. As long as that's blue, you should see your chat. And please feel free to put something in there. Share with us either something that you've really enjoyed about telework, or maybe something that has been less enjoyable for you as it relates to telework or working remotely. I agree, Ms. Schickner. Yes. It's called the work mullet, right? We're dressed up nicely from the top, but shorts on the bottom. Commutes, yes, for sure. Okay. Easier to organize meetings. Good. See a lot of, we hear that a lot from principals, that you get more done at home, fewer interruptions. So I definitely hear that. Yes, Smith, the kids and telework is definitely tough. It is harder to shut down, right? That line between, there's no getting in your car, and that's a clear division between work and home. There's just walking into the next room. So it definitely is different. Glued to the computer, good. Okay, so we have kind of a mix of things, right? There's some things that have made life a lot easier, and maybe some things that have been more challenging for us. And I think for some of us, it just depends on the environment that we are already doing our teleworking in. You're actually eating lunch. Good for you, Ms. Preston. Sometimes that's hard to do when we're actually at work. So great. Thank you so much. If anybody else has anything else you want to share, please feel free to drop it in. Yes, Ms. Sabri, the face-to-face discussions. It's not always the same when we're on the computer, but we can still build some of that rapport and those connections. But the people and the connections are the thing that we hear most often that's challenging. And the sitting, yes, for sure. All right. So we hopefully will only keep you sitting with us for the next just under 90 minutes. And then I do hope that you all get a chance to get out there and enjoy the nice weather a little bit. Maybe you can eat your lunch outside. All right. So thank you so much for sharing your ideas. Now that we know kind of how some of us feel about working virtually or being connected to each other in a virtual environment, we'd like to focus specifically on your experiences with webinars as it relates to either for training or for meetings, and then specifically which platforms you're familiar with. So in just a moment, I'm going to open a poll for you. And depending on your screen or what kind of device you're on, if you're on a mobile device, you probably see a pop-up saying that you'd like to, would you like to do the poll? Click open. If you're on a computer, then it should open up for you on the right. If it doesn't, you can click the three dots at the bottom and choose polling, and then you should be able to see those options. And so we're starting off with just whether or not you've led webinars or virtual training sessions, and then which platforms we've had some familiarity with. So I'll give us a few moments to work through that. Okay, so I see quite a few people are submitting responses. We'll take just another few moments to get those in. And again, you should see the poll on the right side of your screen, kind of where chat is. If you don't see it there, try clicking the three dots and your poll. There should be polling as an option. So far, it looks like a lot of us have participated, which, given our current environment, is not surprising, right? I'm going to give it about 10 more seconds, and then I'll start closing the poll. All right. So there will be a little extra buffer time while I do shut the poll down, and then we'll get a chance to see how everybody has responded. But just to give you a little preview of that, it does look like the majority of us here, about over 50% of us, have participated in webinars. See, there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and show you these results again. Depending on your device, you may have to kind of accept the poll results. Otherwise, you see them right on the screen. But you can see most of us have participated, but not as many have led. So that's okay. The good news is with webinars, you participating in one is almost as valuable as previously hosting one, because I'm sure you've all been in good webinars, and I'm sure we've all had an opportunity to be in a not so good webinar. And both of those can really inform your practice. We want to emulate what we saw in the great ones, and we want to avoid what we saw in the ones that were less engaging. So you're definitely bringing something to the table regardless. And then as we look through the platforms, not surprisingly, most of us have engaged in Zoom and Meet, right? That's where we've kind of lived the last 3 months. So today we are going to show you WebEx, and when we talk through some of the features, you'll be able to make those comparisons to both Zoom and Meet and have some understanding of why WebEx may be a good environment for you to host some of your meetings, especially those with your larger audiences. And then we do have a variety of other places that maybe other tools that we've used. So again, I thank you so much for contributing and participating in that poll. We're going to do just a little bit more here. So just as we go work together for the next a little under an hour, Monica, like I said before, will take you through a demo of webinar, from setting it up to executing to talking about the follow-up. And then Kim, again, will come in with some tips, and we'll follow up with some just next steps and questions, so that when you leave, you feel that you're ready to get started. So our last kind of collaborative activity that I'd like us to participate in is more of that feeling that we get. So if somebody says, hey, we're going to do this virtually, or we're going to do this in a webinar, what comes to mind? And I'm going to paste a link in chat. And I would like you to, if you don't mind, and if you're able to on your device, click the link that I just pasted in chat. That will take you to a page that looks like this. And please just type in 3 words or phrases that come to mind when you think of a webinar. So I'll give us a few moments to contribute to that. Again, just click the link in chat and you can start adding your ideas. Okay, so I'm getting a little preview of our responses, which is why I'm chuckling. You'll get to see them here in just a little bit. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that you can see what everyone's contributing. So here we have this Menti is a way for us to actually build a collaborative word cloud as people are submitting responses. So it's dynamic in that it's going to change every time somebody submits something new. And of course, the words that are bigger are the ones that are represented the most. So we do see things that describe the technical aspect. It's virtual, right? Maybe it's convenient, it's a meeting. But then we also have some other words that are sticking out there, right? Boring, long. But then on the positive side, we're seeing things like engaging and collaboration. So everyone is going to bring those preconceived feelings and anxieties or excitements when they come to a meeting. So we're hoping today that in some of the activities that we just did, plus what Monica and Kim will talk to you about, that you'll have other ways that you can bring it in, so it's not just sit and get, or it's not just listening to somebody. So again, thank you so much for sharing your ideas in there. I appreciate it. I'm going to jump back to our presentation, but if you have more that you'd like to put in, feel free. And I'm actually going to put this link in the chat if you wanted to revisit the results on your own and see how that evolves over time. Okay. All right. So here's just kind of the nitty gritty about how webinars work. Essentially, every webinar has a host. And that host is usually the person who schedules the session and creates the link. Then they distribute the link to the audience. Now, what's interesting is that our audience has some choices. So some of us, some of you and me included, are probably on a laptop and might have headphones. Today, I have the pleasure of being alone in my house, so I didn't need headphones and a mic. But usually I've got headphones and a mic in for a nice quiet environment. Other people may choose to just listen to a session, or maybe they're watching on a computer and listening on their phone, depending on what their opportunity is. And then we have other people who are watching and listening on a mobile device. Perhaps that's what they have available, or perhaps the way their situation is, they need to be mobile and they're taking the content with them. So we don't always know how our participants are going to join. So we just have to be mindful of that, that some people may not be able to fully participate in our activities depending on how they join the session. And then as we think about what webinars are, besides all those words that we saw in our word cloud, from a technical standpoint, yes, absolutely, they're an online something, right? They start out synchronous, which means we're all here together at the same time. But they are all recordable, which is great because that gives us two opportunities with our audience. It gives us one opportunity to make sure that our audience who needs to hear it a second time can revisit that content. It also gives us a second opportunity to make sure that the content we're delivering is the same content that's being transmitted to multiple audiences. I don't know if you've ever had the occasion where you've had a meeting or you've had a training and you've delivered the information perfectly and your audience heard it and then they took it back and it got changed a little bit. And then that person told it to somebody else and it got changed a little bit. Through no intentional fault of anybody's, it's just human nature. Sometimes we mess it up. But having that recording gives every single person, even if they can't come the first time, the opportunity to hear it. So it's a great resource to have for us. And then, of course, it can be as interactive as you make it. Naturally, it's easier for some of our smaller meetings to be interactive in different ways, but there are still strategies that we can do to create some sense of community among our larger audiences. All right. So we've talked a lot about what they are, how we feel, what's great about them, things like they're flexible, accessible. These were all things that came up in your word cloud. But some other things come up too, right? They're not just great. There are challenges to them. And it's important that we acknowledge what those challenges could be. So this time to participate, we have chatted, we have participated in polls, we've used other websites. This time we're going to go ahead and use our voice. So I'd like for you to make sure that you have your participant window open. You may need to look at the bottom and select that participant window, and you'll know it's open because you see the long list of everybody who's here. And if you would like to contribute to the conversation, I'm going to ask that you just go ahead and raise your hand, and then we'll sort of call on you and give you a chance to unmute and share your thoughts. So again, we're just contemplating what are the challenges with webinars or virtual trainings or meetings, however we want to think about them. I know we all don't think they're sunshine and rainbows, so there are some challenges. Feel free to share. Yes. Ms. Tyler's going to go ahead. You can unmute and please share.
So some challenges that we find in the virtual meetings is knowing whether or not teachers, staff members are really participating or focused in the meeting.
Absolutely. And that
especially without the screens on, they can be anywhere. They don't have to necessarily be right there in the meeting.
Very true. Just because they joined doesn't mean they're there. So there are some things, we could have video as an option now, right? So then we can at least see, are they there or is it an empty chair? So that is a challenge though. And even if they're there, are they actually engaged? So That's a good one. Thank you. Anybody else have something that you find to be a challenge? You can feel free to either raise your hand or just unmute and share.
I find that it's difficult not only just to measure engagement, but you don't have any social cues from your audience to know if you should stay on a topic a little longer, to know if everyone is fully over that topic, or if you need to go into more depth.
Absolutely. It's definitely different than the eye scan that we quickly do around the room when we're face to face. So there are things, it's just doing different pauses, asking people to contribute in different ways, depending if you're all in a shared doc, giving them an all opportunity to communicate. Absolutely. So it sounds like somebody else has unmuted. So go ahead. Yes.
The distractions from the background, and maybe people who can't mute or know how to turn off their camera sometimes is yeah.
There is a learning curve for that, and that can be. And so you'll see today how we can control some of that in WebEx. All right, so thank you so much for sharing all those ideas. Just to give you, there are other challenges that we all face. I think a big one is also the content. How do you take content that you might have a really great way of delivering face-to-face, and how do you repackage that so that it works online and so that it's in smaller chunks? Because we normally don't sit for an online meeting as long as we would be willing to sit for a face-to-face. So it's not just doing it in a different place, it's doing it in a different way in a different place. And that seems to be a big challenge for a lot of us. So in Prince George's County, our official tool for webinars is WebEx. We know that for distance learning purposes, we also have access to Zoom and to Meet. However, WebEx is the tool that we've actually had in place for a little while. And for now, WebEx is open to central office staff. It's also open to principals. As we move forward into the fall, our teachers will have access to Zoom to deliver instruction. But we are encouraging the principals to rely on WebEx to host their meetings. And the nice thing is that it doesn't matter who has the host account. Anybody can participate. So you can use this to communicate with teachers or even with your families. And of course, as we mentioned before, it works on both mobile devices and on computers. So that goes for both you as a host as well as the participants. There are two ways that you can connect in WebEx, and I'll go over the features of them both, but we have personal rooms and meeting center. Both of those ways have all of the same features. It's really just how you get the link and why you would choose one over the other. So you can see here on the right side of the screen, those are the features that are available whether you use a personal room or a meeting center. So when would you choose one over the other? The personal room is kind of a static link. Mine is, pgcps.webex.com/meet/megan.cobley because it's based on my username. So that's the same link I use all the time. That's great for things that are like, hey, let's hop into my meeting room and we can have a one-on-one conference. Or we're doing a consistent meeting. Every Wednesday I meet with this group of people to talk about this. So rather than creating a new link every time, it's a standard place to go. The other option, Meeting Center, is kind of what we're used to. You schedule a session, it gets a unique link, it has that password, and then you can give that unique link that's just for that specific day and time to your audience. And we recommend those for more scheduled training, scheduled meetings, intentional groupings, things like that. But again, once you're in, everything else is the same. So it's just how you decide to get people there. But before we can do any of that, as far as scheduling and getting people into our sessions, we do need to know that there are two pieces of software that would be helpful for you as the host. The first one is a Chrome extension, and there are actually two Chrome extensions. One is for you as a participant, so without even realizing it, you've probably all installed that one. And then the second one is for a host to allow you to share. Now the great news is, if you are a Chrome user and you're signed into Chrome, and Chrome is the browser we recommend using, but if you sign into Chrome with your PGCPS email address, these have already been pushed out for you, so you don't even really have to worry about it. But it's important to know that there are 2 extensions that are necessary for participating and hosting. The second piece is the desktop app. Now, you won't need this today, but after today, you will want to install this. And I'm going to go ahead and just show you. You'll have access to this presentation, and here's some information depending on whether you are a Windows user or a Mac user. But why do you need the desktop software? Only the host or the presenter will need that. And that just lets you have the option of sharing. It also lets you have the option of delivering some polls. Your participants will not need to install the desktop software. They'll just need that extension that kind of happens the first time they do a meeting anyway. Okay, so this is something you can do after the session. You don't need to do it now. We just want to make sure that you know about it. Okay, so I'm going to transition this over to Monica, but while she is taking over, I'll take, if there are any quick questions, you can drop those into chat and I'll try to address those while I pass her the ball.
So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today as Megan has walked us through how to use WebEx and kind of get an idea of the features that are available. You had an opportunity to participate in the chat, as well as unmuting yourself to speak and taking a poll. Now we're going to move forward and discuss the phases of a webinar. We'll walk through what those phases are, and then we'll have an opportunity to look at the back end and see exactly how WebEx works from the host view. So thinking about the phases of a webinar, the first part is planning. How do you schedule your meeting? What do you need to do in order to schedule that meeting and advertise it to your audience? So we'll discuss that. Once you actually start your meeting, are there any settings that you may want to select? So I'll review a couple of recommended settings that you may want to use during your sessions. And then executing. How do you share content or create that poll like Megan did earlier? Where do we go for those features? And then lastly, follow-up at the end. After it's over, where do you find the recording of your session, as well as any reports that may be available? So we'll take a look at those things as well. All right, so first thinking about scheduling. You're going to schedule your session in WebEx, and then you're going to figure out how do you want to advertise this virtual session. So if it's something that is for your staff, maybe you're just putting that WebEx link inside of a Google Calendar invite. If it's a training, because I know we have a few central office staff during this session as well, you might consider putting it in My PPS so that teachers can sign up and they'll receive the link that way. Or if it's our community members, our families, then maybe you're going to have them register through a Google form to say that they're going to participate in the session. Or how are you going to share that WebEx link with them so that they know how to join the meeting? So think about those things as you prepare to schedule for your events. So now we're going to dive in and take a deeper look at WebEx. How do you get to WebEx? There's 2 ways. The direct link is pgcps.webex.com, or you can go from our staff portal and under applications, if you scroll down, you will notice that WebEx is there as well. So either one will get you to the WebEx platform. Now, at this time, if you are on a computer and you would like to go through the scheduling process with us, I invite you to either open, if you're in Chrome, you can go to File and open a new incognito window, or you can open another browser, or you can simply open another tab. If you are on a mobile device, I encourage you to just watch because the process is a little different on a mobile device than it is on the computer, and it may not match up what we're showing here on the screen. So I'll recommend that you just watch what we're doing. So I'm also going to use an incognito window. And again, we're going to that URL. I'll put it back up, pgcps.webex.com. Or you're getting to it from the staff portal. Once you go to that site, actually mine is already logged in, so you're going to see it. You should see a blue sign-in button. And then it's going to prompt you to go ahead. When you click sign in, it's going to prompt you to put in your full email address. So you're going to put in your full email address with the @pgcps.org. And then you will select next. Then it's going to ask you for your username and password. This is where you will put the same information that you use for logging into your email. And then it should take you into the WebEx environment. If you have any issues, those of us that are trying to follow along and log in, if you have issues getting in, please just let us know in chat. And if we can't resolve it during this session, we will make sure that we resolve the account problem afterwards. Once we're logged into WebEx, you're going to notice that at the top, you'll see your name and personal room. So Megan mentioned to you that we have a personal room and then we have meetings. They both function exactly the same. The difference is in that personal room, you have your own static URL. So that's that URL you should see listed under the title personal room. So that's the one that you could give to a teacher for a virtual office hour. It never changes. It's always going to be your link. Right? When you're ready to start your personal room, you don't have to schedule this. This is just ready to go all the time. And when you come in, you just click on start meeting, and then the other person can join you in the meeting. So that is how a personal room would work. However, if we wanted to schedule an actual meeting and scheduling it in advance to do with staff or family members, then we're going to come over to the schedule button. So I'm going to go ahead and click on schedule. And my window is going to change. And now I have to enter in some information. So where it says meeting topic, I'm going to put the topic for my meeting. Where it says password, WebEx is going to give you a default password. However, you can change it. So you can put whatever you want to be here. It just needs to be at least 4 characters long. And it cannot be the words PGC, or it cannot be the acronym PGCPS, because that is our domain. But generally, anything else that is 4 characters long will be accepted. Next, we're going to select our date and time. So again, you'll just set whatever date it is in the future that you plan to have your meeting. You're going to schedule the time for it. And then the duration. So the default is set at an hour. However, if it's less than an hour, you can change that and just do the minutes. If it's a little over an hour, then you can schedule that as well. And then you select done. Now, if this is a reoccurring meeting, like maybe it is your staff meeting and it occurs once a week on the same day and same time, you can set that up here as well to be a reoccurring meeting. Now let's move down to our attendee section. So for our attendee section, this is where you could enter in maybe someone else that is going to be maybe one of your co-presenters, even though they're still going to be an attendee. You could put their information here. But this is not tied to our Active Directory. So I cannot just start typing everyone's name in. I can't bring in my staff group here. So what we usually recommend is that you at least put yourself in so that you can get that attendee email. And then once you have it in your email, you can forward it on to whoever else may need that information. All right, so again, some names will pop up here, but the names that will pop up here, will be the ones that are people who have host accounts within the WebEx platform. So now I'm going to come down to where it says show advanced options. I didn't finish typing Megan's name, so that's why it gave me that little error. So I'm going to come down to advanced options, and under advanced options, the one thing that I wanted to point out is under scheduling options. So here under scheduling options, there is one feature, automatic recording. So for automatic recording, that will allow you to start recording as soon as you start your meeting. So this way, if you happen to forget to click that record button, WebEx is already recording for you. Another thing that is here, alternate host. I will explain that as well. Alternate host will allow anyone else that has a host account. So maybe if you're a principal and your assistant principal also has that host account, it will allow them to start the meeting in your absence. But they have to have a host account in order to start the meeting. So both of those features are there. Once you have added all the information that you want to add, you're going to click schedule. So now here's all of our meeting information. I have my meeting link. I have a meeting number and the password. What I need to provide to my audience is really this meeting link. They shouldn't need that meeting number or password unless they're just going directly to WebEx, then it may ask them to enter in that information. However, you have all of this information here. If you need to copy it, you can come up to the two pieces of paper and you can copy that information down. So any questions about the scheduling piece before we move away from this particular page? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions at this point. So I'm going to move forward and we're going to click on our home icon. So when I've scheduled my meeting, I'm now clicking back on that home icon. And when I'm ready to start my meeting, I will see it listed here under upcoming meetings. So here's the one that I just scheduled. And when I'm ready to start the meeting, I log in and I click start. Now, this upcoming meeting section will only show 7 days out. So if you scheduled your meeting for next month, you may not see it here, but it is located under the calendar feature on the left-hand side. And from here, you can select whatever dates the next month, next 30 days to see all the meetings that you have scheduled. At this point, I'm going to move us away from being in our WebEx environment right now, from our scheduling piece. Unfortunately, since we are conducting a WebEx meeting, we can't also start our new meeting. So for this next portion, this will be just demo and you will watch to see what it looks like on that host side, because we can't be in two meetings at the same time. So I'm also going to return to back to where our presentation is, and I ask that you do the same. And now I'm going to switch my window because right now the way that I'm presenting is I'm presenting our Google Slide presentation, but I want to show you what it looks like when you actually start your meeting and what you would see on the back end of WebEx. So I'm going to share my meeting window. All right, so when you first log in to WebEx, this is what it will look like. And so you will have to begin to set up your environment. So some of the things that you may want to do when you're setting up your environment is you click on that participant icon because you want to see the people as they're coming in. You want to select your chat icon so that you can post messages to anyone that may need to communicate with you. And then you want to set some of your settings. So the ones that we typically will go to are one, under the view menu, show participant video. So by default, when you first start your meeting, that is selected. If you are planning to have a meeting where you are going to be showing video of each participant and having a discussion, then you want to leave that selected. But maybe if it's something that you're doing with community members or if it's a bigger training, you may not want to have videos on because it could be distracting for you. So it's not turning it off for the other people, but it's turning it off for you as the host to not have the videos playing across. And that's also beneficial if you're recording, because sometimes you don't want those recordings to include the videos of the participants. Okay. So you have that feature there as well. Another area that we always go to is the participant menu. So under the participant menu, this is where you can mute people on entry so that they automatically come in muted. Now they can unmute themselves, and if they do, then mute all will become active and you can always go back and mute everyone again. Also, you might want to turn off this anyone can share is selected there. I may want to change that from anyone can share and take that off. What that means is technically anybody could pass that ball or take that ball and start sharing content. Again, it depends on your meeting. If it's a collaborative planning session and people are sharing, then you want to leave it on so that the teachers can take it and share. They do not have to have a host right in order to present. And then the last one is assign privileges. So under assign privileges, this is where you can decide if you want to have chat turned on. So maybe for your session, you want to turn chat off and on only during certain points in the presentation. This is where you can do it. So you can say that maybe they could only chat the host and the presenter, but not publicly with everyone else or with other participants. And then you would click assign. You can always turn it back on at any time during your presentation. Also on the participant tab, you can decide if you want them to see the participant list. Again, if this is a large group, maybe like a back to school night or something that has to be virtual, then you may not want everyone to see the participant list. So you can turn that feature off as well. Okay. After you make any changes, you click assign. Right, so now we have our settings done. If I'm going to use polling as part of my session that I'm doing, I want to walk through how I would turn on the polling feature. So on my presenter menu, I have the three dots. If I select those three dots, polling is an option right there. It then opens a polling panel on the right-hand side. And then I can add questions. If I wanted to clear the questions I have here, no, right now, this is what it will look like initially. All right, so I can click on the question mark to add my question. All right, and then when I want to add my answer choices, I go to the next icon to add an answer choice. Right. When I'm ready, I can just let that poll sit there until I'm ready for it to be released to my audience. But when I am ready for it to be released to my audience, I would need to click on Open Poll. The next thing that I'm going to do is share my content. So how do I share my content? And I might also want to record. So this is the recording feature right here. I just select that I want to have it recording like it's already doing for this session. But if I want to share content, I'm going to come to that third circle with the square and the arrow pointing up. Once I open it, you'll see that there's multiple ways that I can share. So the first one is sharing my screen. That's sharing my entire desktop. So be mindful that if you're sharing your screen, you're sharing everything that is on your desktop as well that they can see. As I come to that second row, this is showing me any applications that I have up and running on my machine. So I have Chrome going right now, and I have Microsoft Excel open, as well as my system preferences. So if I wanted to share any of these things, I would just click on the share button and it would start sharing for me. I can also share a file. Other applications would just allow me to get to any other applications on my machine, a whiteboard, or I can even share my iPhone or iPad screen. So you have multiple options. If I know that I'm going to play a video as part of my meeting, then I also want to come up here to the top and choose to optimize for motion and video. So that'll help stop some of the choppiness that is played sometimes during virtual meetings. And then I'm not going to click on any of these right now because it would take you away from seeing this back end feature. But know that if I selected an application or if I selected the screen, my browser, any of those things, I then would have this floating toolbar that you see hanging up here. So this allows me to get to all the other things that I may need. So from this floating toolbar, typically I can open my chat, I can open my participants, I can mute myself, and I can get to polling under the more option. All right, so I know that we kind of went through the different things that are available. We looked at settings, we looked at how we would share our content, how we would add a poll. And again, I'm gonna come back over to this poll section. When I'm ready to open a poll, I would just click on open poll. And then my participants would get a pop-up box that says, hey, would you like to take the poll? And they would have to click OK. And then if they began to respond on the back end side, you would see, like you can see on my screen now, how it comes in for the host. You can see if people are responding. And so then you can gauge how many people haven't responded and decide when you want to close the poll. So earlier when Megan did polling with you, she was giving a few more moments because she could see that a majority of us had not answered the question yet. It does give you a time, it's counting down for you, 5 minutes, which is kind of long to have a poll. So usually you'll gauge how long you want to leave that poll open for people to respond. So thank you for those of you that responded. You didn't have to respond, but it does help to show how it comes in. And so I'm now going to show what I would do to close the poll for the audience. So when I'm ready to close it, I would click on the button that says close poll. I'll get a little pop-up that lets me know that it's going through and collecting all that data. And then I have the option now to share my poll results with the attendees. So I can choose to select that I want to share the poll results and then click apply. And that's how the poll results then come back to you as the audience to see what the results were. Know that at any time you can also create those poll questions in advance. So for some of our sessions, we create them in advance. You come in, you create your poll question, and then down here at the bottom, there's a little icon that allows you to save it. And you can save it in a folder, your desktop, wherever you want. And then when you're ready, you just come and open and grab those poll questions so that you don't have to do it every time. Right. And then the last thing that I wanted to show is, because I'm going to move this over to Kim soon, is how do we have co-presenters? So if we're having a session, how do we have those co-presenters and let someone else present? So I'm going to come back to my participant screen. And if I wanted someone else to present, again, whether they have WebEx host rights or not, they can still present because I am the host of the meeting. So I'm the moderator and control of the meeting, but the presenters can be anyone. So I could allow, if I wanted to select someone, I would just come to their name. And if I have a long list of people, I could specifically search for someone that I know is the presenter. And then I can right click on their name and choose change role to presenter. Okay. You can see I can also make somebody else a host. So if for some reason I needed to leave the meeting and I needed someone else to carry on, I could also make them the host as well. So do I have anyone that would like to volunteer for me to pass the ball to you and you could try and share something with us? It could just be the PGCPS website. It could be anything. It could be your school website, but it gives you an opportunity to see how it would work to share content with the audience. So if you would like to volunteer, raise your hand. Remember, Megan pointed out to you that you can find that hand icon next to your name and kind of hover over your name towards the microphone. You should see the hand. Or you can put it in chat if you would like to volunteer to try and share content. And I'll walk you through it. So, okay, so I see some hands up, but those were people who spoke before, so I'm not sure if they raised their hand again or if they just never put their hand down. So Natasha is, oh, I see the hands going down. Right? So I'm assuming that they did not want to. Okay, and that's fine. Kim's going to walk you through and talk to you about how to practice on your own. But at this time, I'm going to share presenter rights with Kim so she can walk us through some other portions. Actually, I'm sorry, before I do that, I want to review some presenter tips. So I'm going to switch back to my presentation for a second. All right, so before we move over to Kim, let's just talk about some things to think about when we are presenting. You want to join your session or start your session at least 15 minutes before the start time. As we've been doing the distance learning trainings, we'll start them even sometimes a half an hour before and people come right in. But that gives you some time to do some of those settings, get your presentation up before people start joining. The next thing you want to have is you want to have all of your websites open and applications. Anything that you plan to use during your session, make sure that you already have those things up and ready so that you're not fumbling when you are trying to share your content. Then pinning your tabs. So this is a little trick that is in Google Chrome. So if you're using that Google Chrome browser, which we recommend, you want to pin your tabs. And what that does is you'll notice that I have two tabs over here that look really small, and that's because my tabs are pinned. It allows me not to accidentally close the tab. So I don't have the little X there. I can't close it out by accident. So if you want to pin a tab, you just right click on the tab and then you go down to pin. So again, all it does is it makes it harder for you to accidentally close that tab. The next thing is if you're using Google Slides as your presentation method, then you want to put your presentation in presenter view. So I do want to show how that would look. I'm going to come out exit. And so when you see the presentation, oftentimes if we're presenting in front of a group of people face to face, we'll just click on this present right here and it goes full screen for us and we go into our presentation. However, if we're in the WebEx environment or really any of the other environments, you can go into what's called presenter view. So to find presenter view, you're going to click on the drop down arrow next to present and you're going to select presenter view. You'll get a pop-up that kind of gives you any notes that you may have. You can close that out. But the difference is now I have access to all of my tabs, whereas if I just click on the word present, it takes over my entire screen. So now I have access to move around in my tabs. And then lastly, you want to remember to record. So we went through planning, we went through setting up and choosing our settings, how to execute by choosing our content. And the last thing is that follow up. Where do you go for the recording and where would you go for reports? So I'm going to jump back over into my incognito window so that you can see. And we're going to imagine that we had our session already. It takes generally about 24 hours for the recording to populate. Sometimes it's a little less depending on how long your meeting is. But where you'll find the recordings is over on the left-hand side is the third icon that has the little circle. So when I select recordings, here it will show all of my recordings from any of the sessions that I've done. So today we had these 2 sessions and we can see that they're still generating. So again, it does take some time, up to 24 hours, for that recording to populate. But once it's here, you'll be able to come, and if you needed to download the recording, you could by clicking on that little arrow that points down and allows you to download it. So if you were putting it somewhere else, like on YouTube or somewhere else, you could do that. However, most times what we do is we just want to share the recording with our audience. So that's the second icon with the 3 circles. If I click here to share it, I can again put my information in so that I can get that email that has all the shared information for the presentation. And then after I've done that, I can send it to myself. This recording is now saved from the WebEx server, so it's not eating up any space on my desktop, on my computer. And I don't have it just stored in Drive. I can, but it's now here in WebEx. And I can save it and anyone can come click on the link and watch the recording. Now, as far as reports, I'm going to show you where you will find the reports. At this point, unfortunately, this week, the WebEx reports are down. So I'm not able to access it and show you what it would look like when you generate one. However, hopefully it will be back up and running next week. And this is where you'll find them. You'll come over to where your name is and you'll select the drop down. And under there, you will see My Reports. And so the report most often used for meetings is the usage report. And that usage report will essentially provide you the attendance information for your session. So if you click on it, you'll be able to select the date range of your meeting, whenever it is, or you can do it by topic. And then you'll click display report. Now remember I said it's not working for us right now, so it's not coming up, but generally it will come up with a report that will show you everyone's that participated in the session. So even if they did not put their full name, if they had to put an email address in order to join, so you would at least see that email address. And you also can see the duration of how long they were in your meeting. So you'll be able to see if they were only there for 10 minutes or if they stayed for the full hour. Right. So that is available to you as well. All right, so now at this point, I'm going to pass the ball to Kim so that she can share some additional tips with you of things to think about as you begin planning to deliver your meetings.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. As Monica mentioned, I'm going to close out the session today by giving you some tips to think about as you're preparing to deliver, as well as you're preparing for your session in general. We also have some resources that you can use as takeaways after today. Before we get to that, though, I want you to kind of reflect for a second. Megan started this session just by giving you some different ways to interact within a webinar and hopefully to give you some ideas about how you can engage your audience over time. So you saw polls, you saw a third-party tool that she used, Mentimeter, to allow you to go out to a website. You also saw how to use chat, how to raise your hand. You can pick whichever one of those works for you as a way to engage with the question that I'm going to ask you now. And Monica, of course, walked you through the technical pieces that are needed in order to use WebEx Meeting Center. So my question for you now is, now that you've seen the platform, what are any general thoughts or ideas that you have for how it's used? Again, feel free to type it in chat, unmute and share.
It will help with your wondering who's in attendance with your meetings, your faculty meetings, your collaborative planning. It lets you have some accountability.
You're absolutely right, Ms. Clomax. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right. Ms. Cribb said this would have been better for her sixth grade parent information. It can be more interactive than Zoom, depending on what you're using. And I'm going to give you another tip because there is some people who really, really like Zoom, and feel free to keep sharing your tips and ideas. At this point, I'm going to ask that you share them in chat because I'm going to pause just for a second to show you a feature that a lot of people really like in Zoom. And that is that you can change your views. So there's a couple different things. Like, for example, in Zoom, a lot of people like that they can see all the videos all at once, right? So I'm going to show you that on your screen, and I'm not going to share my screen on purpose because I don't want you to get mixed up about which toolbar I'm pointing to versus which one you're pointing to. But if you look near the top right, where like a video panel is, as a matter of fact, let me turn on my video, make sure I'm camera ready. And feel free to be camera ready as well if you want to, because in just a second, I'm going to ask you to enable your camera if you want. But near the top right of your screen, you'll see kind of two toolbars that float next to each other. One, if you hover on it, might say something about like grid view versus speaker view, so forth and so on. And one may say floating panel. So I'll walk through what both of them do just to give you an idea. So I'm going to talk about my floating panel first. Again, if you hover, usually where one of the video people should be, you are able to see um, your floating toolbar. So first of all, with your floating toolbar, that kind of controls where on the screen your participant panel, so forth and so on, end up. It might also take you into a full screen. So that kind of shows you whether you want to be able to see the participant panel on the side or whether or not you want to open it at the bottom or as a pop out. So that's kind of what the floating panel does. But there's another toolbar, again, that if you hover on it, you'll see active speaker with tiles, or grid view. So I'm going to eventually land on grid view. And when I click there, for me, I only see 4 screens, like 4 little video icons. But if I click, hold, and drag it out, I can see up to 25 people on my screen at once. Now, clearly, I'm not going to be sharing content at the same time that I'm doing this because it's going to be really hard for me to see. But I can see Megan, and I see a lot of bashful people today who don't have their cameras on. But feel free to say hi to one another if you want at this moment. I see Monica wear her ponytail. Hey, Miss Faison, I see you. Y'all know I can't see. I keep getting close to my camera and backing up. I need new glasses. Hi, friends. So, of course, this is a way for you to interact when you're not sharing content with one another, and you just want to talk to each other. So, don't think that it has to be that you're just talking at someone through a presentation. So, know that you have that grid view available for you too. All right, I'm a little camera shy, so I'm coming back, and I'm going back to my presentation. Plus, I make weird faces while I'm presenting, so I'm trying to avoid all that from going on too. All right, moving further. Again, I'm going to talk to you some think about. So, kind of, these are some things to consider as you're planning and developing a webinar. Okay. Of course, you're going to think about the needs of your audience first, but the needs of yourself is also important. So we're going to think through these things. Incidentally, I do have a handout that will be shared with you toward the end of this session with the questions on it. So you're going to kind of answer based on whatever the needs of your group are. Okay. So first of all, what essentially are the takeaways for your webinar? What experience do you want for your participants to have? Keeping in mind, and a lot of people have this mistake, Megan mentioned it earlier, you cannot take an offline experience and duplicate it online. So if you're used to having a 2-hour staff meeting, you're not going to have a 2-hour online meeting because it's hard to engage people for that period of time. So how are you going to still get to the same content that you need to get to? Perhaps you can divide what you plan to do over smaller segments. Perhaps you can send a video or some piece for them to engage in advance. And then you spend your time during the session online with whatever that meaty discussion is that you need to have while you're face to face with them. Don't negate follow up. Perhaps there's a follow up activity that you want people to do afterwards, right? You can combine a lot of different things together. You can record a video, put it in Classroom, and have them watch it in advance and then join your online meeting. So kind of think about the entire experience that you want for them to have. Now, one of the things about that experience is going to be what how many people you're engaging with, right? So I'm going to show you, and you will get access to this resource document at the end. But right now I'm going to engage with video conferencing comparison chart, because if I am hosting a meeting with my community members, I might be expecting a large group of people who will join. It might be larger than can be accommodated in a different tool. So I'm going to just take some time now to share with you some of the features of the video conferencing tools that we've engaged since distance learning. So Google Meet, which is native to Google, we've engaged. We have it for now up through September 30th. There is no plan to keep Meet after September 30th. Google was generous enough to give it to us for free, and we used it for free and we will use it for free through the 30th. But it can engage up to 250 participants. You know that the recordings automatically save in Drive. So this kind of gives you a background about Meet. With Zoom, Megan alluded to it earlier, but the free version of Zoom that we've used is available to us through July 1. After that, the district has a plan to replace some licensed users for Zoom. Megan mentioned earlier that those licensed users will primarily go to classroom teachers in the fall, and we're encouraging our principals and administrative staff to use WebEx meetings. WebEx meetings is by far, people say it's like the Cadillac of webinars, because it does provide a lot of different options, all of which you don't have to use. I see that breakout question, and I know it hasn't been answered on purpose because I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But you'll notice that WebEx meetings host up to 1,000 participants. Some of your schools have more than 1,000 kids. So clearly you might need a larger capacity for using a video conferencing tool. So of course, WebEx meetings would be it. So this comparison chart you will have access to at the end of this session today. Breakout rooms. What is only visible right now is that breakout rooms are in Zoom. We do like to host small group meetings. We do. We like to put people into small group meetings to have discussions about particular topics. Wonderful. However, that feature is not natively available in WebEx meeting. I urge you to think differently. Does it mean that you can't host small group meetings by putting different links in a different place? Perhaps, especially if you're with adults. Okay, from this time to this time, I want you to go here and do this XYZ, whatever it might be. Conveniently, of course, breakout rooms in Zoom are beautiful. However, they are not native to WebEx meetings. So I'm going to give you a caveat, because down at the bottom, we are showing you purposefully WebEx Meeting Center, but WebEx actually has several different components. You saw personal rooms, it has meetings, but it also has something called Training Center. It even has something even bigger than that. We focus primarily on Meeting Center because it is a very simplified platform that if you're familiar with using a webinar environment at all, it's not difficult to pick up and learn. The recordings save automatically so that you can share them easily. Even if you're someone who like edits videos, it very easily allows you to do that. But breakout rooms aren't available. However, there is a feature in WebEx called Training Center where breakout rooms are available. But the technology training team is telling you, please don't jump into WebEx Training Center out the gate. It is not very easy to use. Um, there is a learning curve for you. There will be a learning curve for your audience as well. So try Meeting Center first, and then once you become comfortable with it, move to Training Center because that's where you will have breakout rooms that are available for you. If you are someone who edits your recordings, know that you will not be able to do that through WebEx Training Center because they use a proprietary software, proprietary file type to save their recordings. So people have to go into WebEx to actually be able to review that recording. So there are some trade-offs, but this document gives you what those kind of what we see as pros and cons of using WebEx versus WebEx Meeting Center versus Training Center, as well as gives you a comparison of the 3 different platforms that we currently have available. All right, so moving forward, because we were talking about tips for development. So not only are you going to think about the needs of your audience and how many people that you're going to have in front of you, but you're also going to think through like, why are people even coming? Is it voluntary or is it required? Required, sometimes you'll see those people who show up, turn on their camera, and immediately leave, right? So, how are you going to make sure that they're still there? You're going to engage with them 5 to 7 minutes of talking and then give them a question to respond to in chat or another way, right? To make sure that they're still there. You're also going to try your best to keep your meetings at an hour. We've spilt over today, we know, about up to 90 minutes, but at most, have your meetings be 90 minutes. It's really hard to get an adult to engage for a longer period of time. Plus, we got our own mess going on, right? You got people behind you doing whatever they're doing. So it's really hard to stay engaged for a longer period of time than that. So again, consider chunking your sessions, make them into small, bite-sized pieces. Who is your audience? Understanding what their skill level is and what their technology level is. And sometimes that's difficult to do. So when you can, let them become familiar with the WebEx environment at the beginning. If you've attended any of the instructional sessions that we've done for teachers, even this one, I'm pretty sure that we provide the same kind of slides at the very beginning of every session to point out, here's your mute, here's your camera. So just to give them a chance to get acclimated to what's going on. Also, who is going to be your technical point of contact? You'll notice that T3 shows up in a team all the time because it takes more than one person realistically to host a webinar. So who else can you engage? Who's going to be your team? If there's someone who can't get into your webinar, who will they contact, right? Who will be your technical point of contact for that? The other piece that you can do, which I've actually forgotten to do while I was talking, is to engage closed captions because we have deaf and hard of hearing and staff members who will need to be able to see exactly what you're saying if they need to. Also, it's my understanding too that if a parent speaks a second language and they've enabled their language in their whole Google settings, when you've enabled closed captions, I'm told that it changes the closed captions for their language as well. So how did I do that? I'm using Google Slides. Hopefully you are at this point. If not, let's see, let's work on getting to Google Slides. But notice that there's this black toolbar down at the bottom as I'm presenting. All I did was clicked on the captions tool down at the bottom. And the first time it'll ask me to give permission to my computer to use my microphone. Once I've done that, my captions appear. Notice there's a little drop-down menu next to captions. It allows me to choose my text position, whether I want it at the top or the bottom. I can also resize my text. So that's native. Anytime you're using a Google slide, all you have to do is click, and I'm talking, and it picks up my language as I'm talking. So you got to think about the needs of your audience when you're presenting as well. And then how are you going to make it engaging? Again, Megan talked to you about some different ways to engage, but in keeping with who your audience is, if you have them going out and clicking on a bunch of different links, you have to give them time to go out and come back. people, that isn't native to some people to be able to click on a link and end up in Chrome or Safari or some other browser and then coming back to find their webinar environment. So making sure that you have all of that into play. And this kind of talks about the who, but who is going to be the person driving your chat? You don't have to have chat open the whole time. You might have intentional pauses in your session, and you might have a Q&A slide that specifically says, okay, at this point now, I'm going to go take a look at chat and see what your questions are. So you can think about that as also a way to control and manage chat for you as well as for your audience, because it can be a bit much sometimes. Also to think about, if you have to pay people for attending, how are you going to make sure that they attended for the time that they were supposed to be there? Are you going to have them pre-register? All of those kind of pieces will take place into your webinar development. And I see there are some questions. Yes, you can absolutely use third-party tools such as Peer Deck to help with engagement. So you're right. We could use that as another way to engage. So now it's time to deliver your webinar. It's the day that you are ready to host whatever meeting that you're ready to host. Who are your roles that are going to assist you on that day? Are you going to be the host and the presenter? The host is the person who can mute and unmute people. The host is the person who runs the poll, but you can have co-presenters, right? You can have other people who can help manage the chat. So thinking through that environment. If there are people who are calling in on the phone, thinking about who's going to support those people with access as well. Where are you going to be as a presenter? I do not like webinars as much as I've been doing them since April 1st. I personally don't like them because I crave like audience participation. I like to see your face. I like to know that you're able to understand what I'm saying. So for me, it's really hard, but I have to become comfortable with that silence, like that the time when you ask a question and you're waiting for somebody to respond is super uncomfortable. But you have to give that extra time because somebody might be typing and you don't know that. But of course, you can engage camera if you want. It's really your comfortability as well as those of your audience. But making sure that you're in a quiet place. You don't need any special hardware like Megan was mentioning. I'm using my earbuds from my cell phone currently. So you don't really need too many special things except a quiet place that you can work and where you can be. And then again, how are you going to use chat? We talked about that as well. But using it as a way to help engage your bite-sized chunks that you're offering. And then what devices are you using, or what devices are participants using? For us, like I am looking at my iPad and my notes to make sure I don't forget. I live on a busy street. I'm sorry. I know y'all hear the noise, but either way, I am using my iPad for my notes. You can have printed notes if you need them. But I also have a second device next to me because sometimes there's a little bit of a delay between what I say and what I'm showing you. And I also want to make sure that what I'm showing is actually what you see. So you can think about that. A lot of people say, can you see my screen? Can you see my screen? Can you see my screen? That's another way. But of course, you can have a second device. And of course, the device that I'm using to present. But you don't know what devices people are presenting with. So thinking about that when you're choosing your third-party tools is critical because you don't know what experience people will have when they're joining your webinar. We noticed that some people were on their phone today, which we thought about, like, I wonder what these things will do while you're on your phone. We know that your chat shows up differently and things of that nature. So being that you have you're on your phones, you should know that Megan mentioned this earlier, that there is a mobile device for WebEx, and that mobile device, there's a mobile app. The mobile app will let you as a host start or join a meeting. You can also share content. So let's say something happened to your computer, or maybe you're running late and you just want to get your meeting started. You can do that from the app WebEx Meeting. So kind of keep that in mind as an extra thing if you'd like to use it. So what are your next steps? What should you do next? Besides practicing, which I'll get to in just a minute, we want to remind you that you do have a personal room. So try out just a personal room with somebody. Remember, those are ones that you don't have to schedule. You can just create office hours for. So perhaps that's a way for you to help chunk content that you have maybe a lot of different information that you want to share. Um, Let people know you're going to have office hours from 2 to 3 on whatever day and just send them your link. Or you can schedule your actual training or your group meeting or whatever your planned session is. And I strongly encourage you to practice. Practice independently, practice with a partner. Another piece that we have here in our presentation materials that you're getting in just a second is a WebEx meetings task sheet. You can use it for practice. When you practice by yourself, you want to make sure that you can do all of the tasks that you see here, that you can schedule your meeting, that you know how to add people, that you know how to start a meeting, test your audio, et cetera, et cetera. Feel free to jot down notes on your own copy of this. So if there are things that you forget, or maybe you need to be reminded of exactly where do I go to mute people? I know it's under participants and whatever. So you can write your own notes to kind of help you with getting your meeting going. And we showed you a lot of different ways to engage. You don't have to use them all. You can pick the way that makes sense for you. I did not show you share file today because it has not been working for us, but there is a way that you can share like a physical document. It has to be a PDF file from your screen to another person's screen, and that's under the file menu under on WebEx. But again, it hasn't been working, so feel free to try it out. We also have a way for you. We encourage you to practice with a partner as well. So have somebody else jump on the call with you while you're sharing back and forth um, to be able to practice your meeting. So remember that passing the ball is what happens when you are giving someone else control of your screen. So if I wanted to make somebody else the presenter, there's a couple different ways I can do it but from my participant panel, I could find somebody else's name. Like right now, I see Amanda here, and if I really wanted to make her the presenter, I could click and hold that ball that Monica showed you, that little blue ball that shows up in the participant panel. It's probably next to my name right now. I could drag that to Amanda's name, and when I release it, it says you are now making Amanda the presenter. As the host, Monica could grab the ball back at any point, so she doesn't lose the ball. Or I could right click on somebody's name and change their role to the presenter. So that's what that means, passing the ball, so that somebody else can be the presenter. Okay. So where exactly are these resources? If you write nothing else down today, this is the piece that you should write down. So I'll pause and give you a chance to do that because this is the resources that I have been alluding to all the time are here on this site. PGCPS, sorry, bit.ly/WebEx PGCPS is your link. Megan has also put it in chat. So if you like to, after writing it down, if you like to join me on that document, I'll talk through the resources that we've provided for you. Again, that is bit.ly/WebEx PGCPS. And I'm going to jump into that document right now just to show you some of the items that we have in here. So at the top, we have a reminder for how to get into WebEx to begin with. And remember, you're logging in with your Active Directory. The presentation that we've used today is here. Today's recording will be linked here as well. So if you'd like to revisit the recording for this session, it will be placed here. The handout that I alluded to earlier that explains or that shares the questions, the think about questions that I had for you, as well as some tips about Meeting Center, when to use Meeting Center versus a personal room, and some additional tips is here. The software that the hosts and the presenters need to install on their computers, the link for both of those is here. Remember that if the software is installed on your computer, all the different ways to share that Monica showed you are what will be available. If you don't install the software, you're only going to be able to see like 2 or 3 ways to share. So just like that's what that's for. The video conferencing comparison document is next. If you missed everything that we said today, hopefully you did not, but if you need to go back and practice, step-by-step guidance is here in the WebEx meetings manual. So that's all to help you prepare. And then to practice, the checklist that I just shared, the task sheet, is the next link below. The host, you're the one who's scheduling the meeting, who's getting it started, finding the mute button, and so forth and so on. That first day or the first couple times that you start a meeting might be a little unnerving. So this again is a tip sheet for you just on getting your meeting started. Again, I alluded to the fact that in the beginning of all of our sessions, we usually host opening slides to acclimate people to the environment. You are more than welcome to grab these slides and make your own copy and start editing whatever resource you have. And then we also have a troubleshooting guide for participants. So if your teachers or whoever your audience is not familiar with how to join WebEx, you can give them this participant guide, and it walks them through the technical troubleshooting that you have. Now, I mentioned to you earlier that we do have Training Center, which is where breakout rooms can be found. Our guide needs to be updated, but when it is updated, we will place it here for those that are brave enough after trying out Meeting Center to hop into Training Center. So it will be placed here for you as well. So again, the link to all of these resources is bit.ly, WebEx PGCPS. Feel free to use it as you need to. So as we close out this session, if there are any additional questions, feel free to unmute and or put them in chat. But we thank you so much for coming today. We want to make sure that we capture your attendance. So if you could, go to the missing attendance link that you see in front of you. I actually think this session is near the top of the list, WebEx for Principals. Today's section number is 20800. The section number isn't required, but as you're filling out the form, so that we can capture your attendance, feel free to jot in the section number. WebEx isn't that bad, you just have to practice. We know most of you, but as a reminder, we are Monica, Megan, and Kim. So feel free to reach out. We are the WebEx team. So feel free to reach out to us if you have questions or some tips in using WebEx. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful summer. Get some rest. Disconnect when you can, please.